In this section of notes, we're going to be looking at the populations of South Asia. We're going to look at the human characteristics, basically the diversity of South Asia, but then kind of look at how diversity is not that big a deal in regards to people groups in South Asia because they don't focus on it a whole lot. We're then going to look at the population density and distribution of South Asia. You're going to see that this is one of the most densely populated areas of the world. And India, in fact, is one of the largest countries in the world in regards to population. And then we're going to kind of look at the urban versus rural life. We're going to look at how urbanization is changing, but then the rural life is not changing. Strap on. Hope you enjoy. Now we're going to talk about populations. First thing I want to identify are the human characteristics. More than 1/5 of the world's population lives in South Asia. It's officially the most populated and fastest, India is officially the most populated and fastest growing country in all of the world. Diversity is reflected here more than anywhere else. Number one, I want to look at India first. India is the one that's big, and it's outlined in green. I'm not going to trace it for you, but you can see it's outlined in green. India, its population is very diverse, but the largest group is the Dravidians and the Aryans. Many Indians identify themselves by their religion and not their ethnicity. And we'll get to the religion aspect of it later. British and the Portuguese colonized India. Number two, I want to look at Pakistan and Bangladesh. Pakistan and Bangladesh used to be part of India, but the British separated them based on their religious beliefs and thought that it would be easier to control the area. Later, these became separate countries because of their Muslim majorities. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Muslim majorities. That's why they were separated from India. Then, a different people group of Sri Lanka, the little teardrop-shaped island south. You would think this would be relatively calm because it's just a little bitty island. But it is fiercely divided. They speak different languages. The Sinhalese are Buddhists, and the Tamils are Hindu. Fierce division between these two people. This used to be war zones, and violence has disrupted the area's economy and demoralized its people. This teardrop-shaped island, you can remember it as a tear because there's a lot of fighting going on. And then we have Nepal and Bhutan. You can see those here. Nepal and Bhutan are the only landlocked nations in South Asia. The ancestors of these two peoples were Mongolians. The populations are divided between the Bote and the Tibetan ancestry. So you can see the diversity among the peoples, even though it's a little area and there's not a whole lot of countries involved in South Asia. Then we move on to the population density and population distribution. The population in India itself, as you can see, is most dense in the southwest and in the northeast of India. That's where it's most dense. Here, coastal plain, and then here you've got these rivers that make a very, very fertile alluvial plain. When you compare the population density with the physical geography, the side by side here, you can see where the populations are most dense are the areas where the elevation is the lowest. You can see that reflected here on the map to your right. This area where it's most dense is the one that's green. It's the lowest elevation. You know what that sound means? It's quiz o'clock. Your first question to answer is, describe how the physical geography affects the most densely populated areas of India. I've got a snapshot here of all of these countries' population pyramids in 2014. They're not in any particular order, just on the order that I looked them up. But you can identify the development of these countries based off of their population pyramids, and you can see that most of these countries are either newly developed, newly industrialized, not newly developed. They're either newly industrialized or they're less developed. That you could see the steepness of these. One thing I do want to point out, in India's here, you could see this huge population here that's about to be up in the elderly. It's about to increase the elderly population, so they're going to have to be dealing with what these types of social services of the elderly more so than any of these other nations, as their population is just booming. And this is in populations in millions. This is not in percentages of their population. But you could see kind of the steepness of some of these that show a little bit less developed, but then you've got a lot of newly industrialized as they're kind of bulging out as a pyramid would look. Some of your less developed nations here, we've got Pakistan as one of your less developed countries. You've also got Nepal as one of your less developed countries, and then even Bangladesh as one of your less developed countries. The other ones I would more put as a newly industrialized country based off of kind of some of the statistics that you'll see in class. Question number 2. Identify the 3 most least developed countries of South Asia. India is the most densely populated country, and Bangladesh is the second most densely populated country. And Bangladesh has a difficult time feeding all of its people because it doesn't have a whole lot of land to farm in regards to its population density. To encourage Bengali women to have fewer children, both private and governmental programs give women small loans to start their own small businesses in efforts to limit the amount of babies that they are going to have, as they will focus more on the working life rather than the urban, focus more on the urban city type life rather than the rural having a lot of babies type life. Now moving on to urban versus rural life. Rural life has changed little over hundreds of years. You have a lot of subsistence farming and a lot of nomadic and semi-nomadic peoples in the rural areas. The urban life, however, has changed. There's a growing urbanization. The cities in South Asia are among the world's most densely populated. Delhi, India's third largest city, is part of a megalopolis, which is known as a chain of closely linked metropolitan areas. Air and water pollution have worsened in these cities as the population size has exponentially grown.